Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and today I'm going to talk about the best films of 2015. Really, it was a year that things continued to change and stay the same, but it was a year that I was happy with. I saw a lot of good movies. I saw a lot of things that I consider all-time classics. I liked going to the movies in 2015. There's sometimes I didn't. There's sometimes I was just okay with it. There's sometimes it thrilled me and the rest of the movie wasn't that great, The Walk, or I was really impressed with the first half and not impressed with the other, Straight Outta Compton. This is just supposed to talk about the best of that year, what I felt was the best that year. It was honestly hard to come up with this because although there were quite a few films that I automatically knew what were going to be at the top, the bottom half and the honorable mentions really could have gone on for even longer than they are on this list. There's so many films that I saw that I was just so into and would just love to see again, and some I saw several times that didn't actually make this list. Now, I don't love making lists, but I do them for a couple reasons. One, most reason is if you're a critic, you kind of have to. It's a big thing. People want to know what you feel are the best films of the year, and it's just kind of something you have to do. I think one of the more important reasons is when I was getting into film, I used these top 10 lists to see movies. I used them as a guide. And even though I had seen some of them on there, I hadn't seen all of them. So use this list if you haven't seen one of these and you're interested in getting in filmmaking or understanding movies better. See some of these, and even if you don't like them, they can open up new worlds for you, and maybe open up worlds that haven't been fully opened up yet, and then in 5 years you'll be like, oh shit, that movie I saw means a lot more. Maybe not, maybe I'm wrong, but be open to it. All these films I highly recommend. I tried to think of what films will live on, what films I kept thinking about, what films I loved each time I saw them, which films I got better on repeat viewings, mainly what I thought was the best. I actually considered about 19 movies. I saw almost 100 films in theaters, but not exactly. But I saw some stuff twice, so that counts, right? I'll just say the honorable mentions real quick, and we'll do a quick, really cut up thing. My honorable mentions are Bridge of Spies, Shaun the Sheep movie, When Marnie Was There, Two Doors and a Coal, Mistress America, The Hateful Eight, Carol, The Martian, and Spring. Those are in no particular order. Those are just movies. But they were all movies I considered, and I considered 19 as probably the most I've ever considered for a list, and even put in my honorable mentions because I thought this year was very strong, and I saw a lot of good movies, and there's probably some that you saw in my other best of the first 4 months of the year or best of the summer that you're surprised weren't in there. That shows you how good it was this year. I have clips of reviews, and I'm also going to say some things as well, depending on which movie. But you can check out the full reviews will be in the description, on an annotation and in the description. So if you'd like to watch the full review, you can do so. But you know, in the end, I think almost any year you can come up with at least 10 pretty good movies. So in some ways, this year is not unlike any other year. It's just a year that a bunch of movies came out. And what's so different from that in any other year in cinema history? But I'd say that the difference is that this year brought us these 10 movies. Now, to kick things off with number 10 is Sicario. It does a pretty general action movie kind of a plot, but knows how to use that to really say something about America's involvement with Mexico and the war on drugs in general. In fact, it's almost, I'd say, kind of genius the way it uses these kind of genre norms to actually say something. You can almost just file this under just a simple, nicely directed genre pick and not really think of it saying anything, and I think that's really the smart thing about Sicario. How it does a lot with just fine craftsmanship from a director I really never thought could do something like this. And in certain ways, Emily Blunt's character is kind of like the typical audience conduit. The person in the movie goes, oh, well, see, this is why this thing is, and I'm just going to tell you, which is seemingly a natural first day on the job kind of thing, but it also takes care of exposition. They don't really do that ever. There's never a scene like that, but that's still her character. Since a lot of times they aren't telling her what she keeps saying, what's my objective, or I walk. They kind of have to tell her what the objective is, but it's almost like they don't know. It's like she's this lost character, isn't being told what's going on, and that's the kind of moral conundrum of the whole thing. It's actually kind of saying something about our morals with the war on drugs. Now, number 9, Kingsman, The Secret Service. Kingsman takes the spy genre and throws it into a very studio director directed kind of film, a la current comic book Hollywood filmmaking, and makes it all an incredibly fun, incredibly violent ride that I didn't think you could do with a spy movie anymore. It's the kind of fun action postmodern spy movies that are kind of right up my alley, and you can see all the back alleys it really goes into if you're familiar with all the films that Kingsman is referencing. Almost feels like at this point he's well tuned to this kind of a story. Like, he's directed this is his third time basically doing this story, and you can see his progress and how he's become even more well seasoned at doing that. It shows like an evolution of a director. Matthew Vaughn is really good at really fun, very violent comic booky movies like almost nobody else. He takes the cheesy kind of Hollywood mode with his own cheesy direction, and the results come out all Gouda. Number 8, Manos, Sucius. Two estranged brothers who are using a boat that has a torpedo filled with cocaine. A torpedo that's empty that they can float underwater, and one sees they have as much cocaine as they have, are in Colombia and are traveling to another part of Colombia with the cocaine. On their way, you learn a lot about them. The whole film is really their journey to get this cocaine from point A to point B. Kind of an old school Western. Not like a Sergio Leone or a post Sergio Leone Western. It's more like before that, when John Ford was the major influence on Westerns. When Westerns really didn't have that many action sequences in them. There was the big thing at the end. There was maybe something in the middle or at the beginning, but they're mainly kind of like small kind of character plays. They're really like two guys sitting around and talking to one another. It's really just male bonding for the most part. And Manos Socius is made in that tradition. And there's certain amount of craftsmanship to this film that maybe people won't really get because it is smaller and quieter for a lot of its runtime. But it doesn't feel smaller and quieter when you're leaving the theater and thinking about it. This is actually probably my favorite comedy of the year, and on repeat viewings it actually holds up better. It's even funnier. It reminds me kind of every time I watch Spinal Tap, that movie becomes funnier somehow. And What We Do in the Shadows reinvigorates a genre that I once thought was dead, and probably does the same thing with its subject matter of vampires, because it is a vampire mockumentary. The kind of thing that just hearing that probably turns you off from this movie, but it's a really amazing, hilarious comedy in the best sense of both of the genres. It very much cares about vampires. It's very well researched. Each of the characters really represents a different kind of vampire, and you can tell the directors of this film actually kind of care about the subject matter, but at the same time they're really good at taking the piss out of it. And I think also that it's a horror comedy that doesn't feel like a horror comedy. It reminds me a bit of Shaun of the Dead in that. I watched it with my wife, and she's not someone who likes horror movies at all, but she thought it was really funny and wanted to watch it again, much like Shaun of the Dead. I know lots of people who will watch a horror comedy, a good horror comedy, who won't watch a horror movie. And I think What We Do in the Shadows has that. When I was working on this list and considering what film should be on this list, number 6 was a film I thought that even if it doesn't make it on there, I should talk about. How I think this is one of the finest examples of someone taking on a long dormant franchise and doing something new with it, and that would be Creed. The director of this film, Ryan Coogler, grew up watching the Rocky films with his dad, and they meant a lot to him. And as his dad got sick, he thought of a story where Rocky would get sick, because that's what Rocky represented to him. And to see him get older and getting sick is emotional in a way that taps into something that we've known for a very long time. We've known the iconography of Rocky. We've known the legend about him, but seeing that legend getting towards the twilight years is emotional. It reminds us of our own mortality, certainly, but it taps into something really about ourselves and what those movies represented for us as a culture and us very personally. And I think Creed takes a franchise and makes it personal in a way that removes all of the facts that this is like the 7th Rocky movie and this franchise will never die. Creed is like everything you want in not just a sports movie, but an audience-friendly, like blockbuster drama that we don't get anymore. It hits you emotionally. I saw this on a Monday night. The crowd was packed and people were crying, people were emotional, people were cheering. It was an insane feeling seeing this film, and it struck a chord with everyone that feels beautiful in that Hollywood way, but almost feels un-Hollywood also, which is what made the first Rocky film so great. Number 5 is Tangerine. As soon as it rockets off to bouncing heartbeats, as soon as Cindy goes and tries to look for the girl that her fiance Chester has been cheating on her with while she was in jail for the past month, it just goes off and it just hits you and you're in it. You're kind of just along for the ride in a lot of it, and it's just a glorious glorious ride to be on. Just the cinematography brings a certain energy to it. You can't let go, and the film's not letting go of you, and you're just twisting around in an amazing, like, fun film-going experience. Tangerine is that kind of a movie. It's the kind of film that makes you realize the potential in small-budget filmmaking. This film was shot on an iPhone and looks gorgeous and amazing. It doesn't feel like it was shot on an iPhone. It's amazing to see a full-of-life indie film again, and I feel like I haven't seen one of those in forever. The fact that this was shot on an iPhone, if you're a filmmaker and you're waiting around for tons of money to make your movie, Tangerine gives you no excuse, and it shows the ingenuity behind good filmmaking. But also, it's a great film. It holds up even better on repeat viewings. Number 4, It Follows. It's one of the most impressive, amazing horror films I've seen in the theaters in a long time, and one that generally creeped me out also. A young girl who, after going on an alright date with this guy, after having sex with him, is gagged, and when she wakes up, he tells her that there is something that has been following him. It won't stop following him unless he passes it off to someone else after he has sex with them, and now it is going to follow her. It will never stop. It will keep following her forever until she has sex with someone else and passes it on to them. And if she is killed by this thing, it will then go back after him. You never know what this it thing is, and you never know what it's going to look like. So when you're showing a crowd shot, you can really do a lot with that, with a deep focus where you can see everyone and you're not exactly sure who this person is going to be. You're never sure. Not knowing is one of the scariest things in a horror movie. You don't know, did they get this curse because of some, like, voodoo thing or some Wiccan thing or some curse from the old days? Has this been traveling for centuries? Is this new? You don't know. And that's scary. That was the scary thing about Halloween and Jaws. That's why we're always talking about Halloween and Jaws, because there's no rhyme or reason. And the director of this film, David Robert Mitchell, actually, this was based on a reoccurring dream he had where something would just keep following him and no one else could see it and he couldn't escape it. And he really just wanted that sense of being scared and being in that moment. Not understanding why someone's after you, that is incredibly scary. Like, it doesn't make any sense. Like, you play by rules and this thing just wants to kill you, and that's terrifying. Number 3, Anomalisa. Anomalisa is a beautiful, honest, heart-wrenching, deconstructionist, simple, and complex movie that hits you, or at least hit me, like any great Charlie Kaufman movie does. I think there's a lot of times in life you can get stuck and think everyone's the same and be so bored and lose your empathy and lose your understanding of other people. And some people never come out of it. Some people who I'm friends with, I feel like, never come out of it. They just feel like life is this way and they're bored by it and nothing surprises them anymore, and they've lost that love of life. This is definitely a fantasy and oddly surreal and strange, but it's also very naked in its honesty. And I think Kaufman again shows he's almost like a master at how he's able to make these strange and emotional films. Alright, and now to the big 2. The 2 that I've kind of known for a very long time would be at the top of this list. I knew they would be on here regardless of anything. And number 2 is Inside Out. One of the original kind of big Pixar brain trust was Pete Docter. And he's finally back with his 3rd film, his follow-up to Up. Now, he hasn't actually been anywhere. He takes a lot longer making films than the other people in Pixar. And he made the challenging, strange, weird movie that's not actually challenging and strange to take in as an audience. When you get to be an auteur, you make your stranger, weirder movie after you're able to have that money. And this is his, but it doesn't feel that way. It feels more personal. It feels more intimate. The thing that's interesting about this film is it's so creative. It's so weird. It's so different. I mean, it's literally a film about emotions. I mean, that's abstract and strange, but it doesn't feel that way. It feels very big and Hollywood and really well constructed and like you can follow it. And my number 1 film, and a film that I almost can't escape how good it is, and also probably the greatest epic achievement I've seen in filmmaking, possibly in my lifetime, and a film I think that will be influencing action filmmaking and filmmaking in general for a decade, but is also one hell of a great directed film, and that's Mad Max: Fury Road. It takes modern action films. It takes the insane craziness that we expect from a car chase movie like Fast and the Furious and amps it up far louder than we could have possibly imagined. And this film feels like someone who hasn't made an action movie in a very long time, that he has just been brimming with ideas and excitement and wanting to apply all these amazing skills he's gotten from working in animation, from working in all these different kind of films, to have it just explode from the brim with awesome action ideas. It's one of the craziest car movies I've ever seen. If you think a Fast and the Furious movie is too kinetic and crazy for you, you are not ready for this movie. You can't take this movie. It's more about the excitement and the thrill, but also this story that he's compacted within all that and making an intensely visual experience. There's not many films that are very visual nowadays. People have to sit down and explain to you what this stupid thing is and the backstory and all that. Mad Max doesn't care about that. Fury Road isn't interested. It wants to do just this one story and tell it incredibly well. George Miller started out as someone who was a film buff making movies, and this feels like a film buff who's gotten older, who's seen what's going on, but has strange, weird, different kind of tastes, but still has the taste he used to have, and just wants to make a crazy, amazing, post-apocalyptic chase movie. And he succeeded on so many levels. It's just fucking insane. George Miller, I think, did one of the better late director films I've ever seen. It makes me hyped up the way I was when I saw the first two Mad Max films. It makes me excited to go to the movies. This gives me faith. This gives me faith in filmmaking, because this is pure fucking filmmaking. Visual storytelling is why filmmaking was invented, to tell stories with audio and video all together. And this film does it in a way that only a master filmmaker could present it to you. George Miller fucking outdid himself. This is what great directing is. And if you can't recognize that, you don't know cinema. Now, that is my best of 2015 list, the top 10 of 2015 list. I will have a worst of 2015 list, but for now, this is the best of. I think it was a good year. I'm excited for 2016. I think 2015 has been a great year on this channel, probably one of its best years ever, and I'm hoping for even better stuff in 2016. I don't want to say anything now, but there'll be an update video later, and there'll be lots of cool stuff coming up, as well as regular video updates and things like that. But I'm excited for 2016. If you haven't seen some of these reviews that I put out of my top 10 films of 2015, or you haven't seen some of these movies, take the time to check them out, because I think you'd really enjoy them. When I think of 2015, I honestly feel like I would think of these movies. All of the ones that were honorable mentions honestly could have been on here as well. It's tough to do a top 10 list, you know. So if you have seen any of my top 10 films of 2015 and you would like to talk about them, or if you would like to list what you felt were your top 10 films of 2015, or what you thought was the best film of 2015, comment below in the comments. I'd actually love to see what you thought were the best films of 2015, or just what generally people thought were. That would be cool to know. And it's cool to share them, you know, much like I am doing now. And thank you for watching, and subscribe if you would like to.